A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
Welcome into One Giant Step. It is one giant draft week. Finally, it's happened to us. We got a draft week that I'm sure nobody will complain about. Never. Shaun, Morash, Bryce, Gelman. This is One Giant Step. Bryce, we were just talking off air here, and important to know for the listeners, this is as wacky a football content creation week as you could have, right? This is going to be kind of our last official what we think will happen, what we think should happen, if that differs from what we think will happen, combined with just catching up on the latest rumors as of this Tuesday, April 22nd, the date we are taping this. But this is another plea, as if you're a frequent listener, welcome back. And I'm sure you've heard this a million times and you're like, shut up already. But this is for all the new listeners maybe catching us for the first time. Please download and subscribe to the podcast, because when you do, you will get when we react to these draft picks. Our vow is to get something out there on Thursday night. But as Bryce and I were just discussing, this could be a wacky Thursday night. There might be a lot of podcasts that you listen to in the Giants world that right away roll one out there if they're pick 3. I don't think that's necessarily the smartest thing to do unless pick 3 is in fact a quarterback, because I think that there is, and more on this in a second, a chance the Giants pick twice in the first round. So we're going to at some point get one out to you Thursday night with our complete reaction. And then, we'll figure out as far as what happens the rest of the draft, how many more we put out, 1, 2. We'll figure that out once we kind of get our footing under us on Thursday. But look, they can be dropping at any time. So if you download, subscribe, you're going to get the podcast alerted right to your phone in that spot. So Bryce, before we get to official picks or whatever, what's just kind of your vibe, your feeling on draft week? You ready to get this thing over with? Are you excited as a Giant fan? Are you more nervous as a Giant fan?
I think more nervous.
Nervous?
Every single report we get, because there's a lot of differing reports, and I want to get into that a little bit more in depth. But on one hand, you see that the Giants ownership is going to be involved in the decision. On the other hand, you see that they're not. When I read that they will be involved, I almost lost my collective you-know-what. And just like, again, we'll get into that, but more nervous with every report. I'm confident they'll take either Carter or Hunter. And I hope that that's the case. I hope it's not Sanders, but I digress. It's a difficult situation here.
Before we get on the record, our picks, and I was ready to go fantasy versus reality, but we're not in season here. Maybe that is a portion of the draft. Just to kind of catch you up on some of the rumors, maybe you've kind of sifted through and seen them, or at least the ones of importance. Let's start locally before I go to national draft stuff. Connor Hughes, I thought, put out a pretty important tweet. I trust Connor, have a good relationship with him, and I think he's pretty connected, not just to the Giants, but obviously the Jets, and the NFL talks to enough people that Brian Daboll actually really likes Jackson Dart. And that is somebody that Daboll has eyed. By the way, put a pin in that, because that's going to matter later when I talk about something else. And, that could be somebody if the Giants are within striking distance. I don't think they would take him at 3, obviously. But Jackson Dart is somebody that maybe Brian Daboll values. I would just say this. I still am so off on Jackson Dart watching as much as I have on him. And I think the one thing I circle on, and I think this is prevailing thought, I don't think this is original thought, he does a lot of things good to fine. But there's not one thing you hang your hat on Jackson Dart and go, that is an unbelievable great quality. Like, for instance, Jalen Milroe, more on him in a second, there was just that lightning speed where you could take off. Shador Sanders, just the high IQ completion percentage stuff. Cam Ward, the arm talent all over. Jackson Dart is not bad at anything, but he just doesn't have an elite trait.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on Jackson Dart and kind of the Connor Hughes rumor? If the Giants walk away with either Carter or Hunter and get a Jackson Dart, are you happy?
Absolutely. It just depends if they have to trade up, and if so, I mean, it looks likely where they trade up to and what they give up. If they give up, let's say, a 4th round pick and a 3rd next year to move back into the first round, maybe they have to give up that 2nd round pick. I assume they probably do. A 2nd and a 3rd this year, or a 2nd and a 3rd next year. If they don't give up, an amount that we think is too much, then I'm happy with it. I think if Brian Dable likes Jackson Dart, we saw what happened last year in Hard Knocks. He really liked Jaden Daniels. I think you have to trust his intuition when it comes to knowing talent among quarterbacks. Listen, he's 1 for 1 last year from what we know, right? We got to give him the benefit of the doubt. If he screws up on this, he's gone. So it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Not really.
I think that where I stand right now would be this. I know that I keep hammering home on pro Shador Sanders. I'll be excited if Shador Sanders is on this team. I will be nervous as all hell if Jalen Milroe is on this team because I think he stinks. I'm fine with the speed and everything. I don't love that. But at least I'll be open to that because I can hang my hat on, what speed quarterback. Maybe he is Lamar Jackson, right? You know what I mean? That late pick that everybody doubted. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's asking a lot, but maybe. I'll be disgusted if Shuck is the quarterback, the Louisville quarterback.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart's one of those. I think I'm indifferent. I think it'll be one of those. You give me a week after the draft, and I will come around to it, doing further deep dives. But I don't think my initial reaction will be, "Oh my God, yes, they got Jackson Dart." You know what I mean?
I really don't know if anyone's going to be like that. I'm sure there are a few people out there who really like Jackson Dart, but I mean, giving up the capital they'll have to give up to move back into the first round, there are going to be people who are upset about that.
What I don't want, though, and please, One Giant Step listeners, don't be these people. If the Giants take Jackson Dart at any point in this draft, end of the first round, mid-first round, second round, that pick 34, don't start doing the Eli went to Ole Miss thing and so did Jackson Dart. Don't do that. Don't sully Eli Manning's name.
It'll happen.
Don't do that. There are rumors about Jalen Milroe out there. The Giants are definitely intrigued with him. But again, I mean, they're intrigued with everybody. Where do these rumors come from? Milroe, again, comes back to the speed. He's going to be a run-first quarterback. Look, when you bring back Darius Slayton on the contract you brought him back on, and you draft Malik Neighbors, is a tuck-it and run-first type quarterback what the Giants are looking for here? Right? It kind of goes counter against what you think they're building to talent-wise. So, again, not one that I'm going to really necessarily wetting my whistle and excited about. Now, here's where things get interesting. Forget the local reports for a second, the national reports. Did you happen to catch the Todd McShay show and his long-winded Giants answer? Long-winded, by the way, sounds insulting. It was actually very insightful.
Yep.
So for those that missed it, obviously we're not going to play back the audio here. I'll just kind of break down the important bullet notes on this. Essentially, within the Giants room, there is a split. There are people within the Giants room in the personnel department that love Shador Sanders. And then it may be on the coaching side, a la Brian Dable, where they don't necessarily love Shador Sanders. If you connect the dots, and I have no idea, other than the fact that we've just seen all the camera footage, video footage, and everything from all of these visits from September on that the Giants placed in Colorado. I'm not expecting many of you to have paid attention like that. I believe assistant general manager Brendan Brown loves Shador Sanders. He seemingly is always front and center on these Colorado trips, always front and center talking his ear off. And I know that he's a trusted guy on Joe Shane's staff, as you saw with Hard Knocks last year, right? When I hear deep in the personnel department, there might be a split. I could see Brown, if he was the general manager, really pushing. And maybe it's Shane being the liaison as the GM going back to the coach, and the coach not sure about that. And then that causes a split. Look, I don't think it means just dysfunction within the Giants room. I think that this is a really difficult decision to make when you're trying to figure out what quarterback to pick. And if you're expecting in a room where, let's just say with the scouts, GM, assistant GM, let's just call it 8 people plus your coach, not 9 people. Let's bring in ownership. Let's just call a room of 10 people that feel important enough to voice their opinion. Asking all 10 to be in unison absolutely on that position at quarterback, I think probably is outrageous when you're not talking about the first overall pick. So,
it's impossible.
Yeah, so I'm not. I've heard some go, "Oh, look at this Giant dysfunction." I don't think it's dysfunction. I think it's that. But what really matters is what do Joe Shane and Brian Dable want? That's really what better matter. It's ownership be damned. And it doesn't seem like, I'm not getting the vibe that John Mara is inserting himself here based on all these reports. I know there was kind of one split on it. McShay, that was another part of his report. John Mara's wiped his hands clean of this. So if you're taking that into account, I don't know. There's a split in whether they like Shador Sanders or not. what is the coach and what is the GM like? And both of those guys feel like they're on a hot seat. And ultimately, are they working in unison, or is Joe Shane looking to save his own job and Brian Dable be damned? I think that ultimately Brian Dable will get the coach he thinks can work best because Joe Shane might feel like without Brian Dable's success, I might be out too. So I don't know. That's just my gut opinion. But who even knows if that's true too? I mean, Brian
Yeah.
Dable's walking around out of here not liking Sanders. Who knows? Maybe he likes Sanders, but doesn't like him enough to trade up or 3 or whatever else, like we saw him definitively like with Daniels yesterday. But I just thought that was, or last year, I thought that was very interesting from McShay, really hammering home where the Giants sit. And because of that, Bryce, I think the draft really does start with the Giants at 3. It
Does.
feels like the Browns are going to take Hunter. It feels like obviously Ward is going to the Titans. And while it may feel like Abdul Carter is going 3 to the Giants, there's still that little bit of uncertainty. So I got one more report I'll throw at you. What's your reaction to the McShay report when you hear that?
I highly doubt the notion that Brian Dable and Joe Shane are not working hand in hand in trying to find the quarterback of this team's future. I think both of them know their jobs are on the line. And for one side, for Joe Shane to be operating behind, and I know you don't think it's 100% true. I'm just answering that and kind of bouncing off of that. For Joe Shane to be going behind Brian Dable's back and not necessarily cultivating interest among the rest of the front office, but going out of his way to make sure that he is not going to be responsible for whatever decision they make here, which I don't see. I think that both of them are working together, and I also think for that report, the McShay report, I saw a bunch out there by a few individuals in the Giants Twitter community that think that this says that John Mara is getting involved. The fact that there is dissension within the organization. And to that, I'm not going to discredit that. Obviously, we haven't heard that. We heard from Adam Schefter that John Mara is definitely not involved with this situation. So, I mean, like you hear from McShay that there's a possibility that, he didn't explicitly say it, but he also said that, there's dissension. So for some people, they took that as John Mara is trying to get involved. But Adam Schefter says he's definitely not involved. I think that there's definitely some validity in thinking that he may be involved because, we've seen it time and time again. I think there's just times when he can't help himself as an owner who, again, as we've mentioned multiple times in this podcast, this is his life. The Maras, This is all they have. It's the football team. It's like the Steinbrenners with the Yankees. That's all they have. It's their family business. So like, why wouldn't they want to stick their beaks in this kind of situation? But I think it's at the point where this is healthy. Like, you shouldn't have an entire, like, I'm not going to make anything political, but there are people out there who employ, advisors that just give them what they want. They're yes men. They're corporate yes men. They don't actually challenge, the thought process of the individual leader. That's not the case with this Giants organization. That's not the case with this report. Clearly, there are healthy conversations. There's a healthy discourse about what to do at the 3rd overall pick because there's a lot riding on it. There's an entire future of this organization riding on. There are multiple jobs on the line based off this decision. So for them to not be disagreeing on this, they wouldn't be doing their due diligence. And there's also the other side of it, a report that came out yesterday. You could bounce back off of this. I don't know when you wanted to bring this up. But essentially, the Giants and the Browns are both looking to trade, not looking to trade down, but they're fielding calls on trading down. This is what you should be doing. Expend all of the available options so you are not at the point and not at the situation where you regret not going out of your way to check on something, to check on, let's say, the Patriots want to trade up. Do they really want Abdul Carter? Do they want to give, a second and a third for us? That would make sense. But to not do that would be organizational malpractice. So listen, I think they're doing their due diligence. Some people want to say that this is Mara getting involved. I don't think that's the case. I can't see that happening. I can't. I know I could be delusional as hell. But, it's happened in the past. I don't think it's going to happen going forward because, Shaun, I think that it was as much Mara as it was Shane and Dable that really wanted Daniel Jones back. And I think that, obviously, fairly, they got a lot of criticism for that. But I think that Mara wanted it just as bad. So I think there's part of him that probably feels bad and says, you know what, let these guys cook or not cook. And, you deal with the situation after they either screw up or it goes.
Which would make sense from McShay's point about I'm hearing John Mara's not involved at all, and I think that's refreshing. And look, let's not beat around the bush. Plenty of Giant fans saw the Saquon stuff on Hard Knocks. That became the meme, right? And there's this prevailing thought, whether how much he does or not, that there's a lot of involvement from ownership. Well, if ownership wipes their hands clean and lets the GM and coach sink or swim this year with the draft, then he can't feel any guilt when it comes time to make a decision because he's clearly let them operate. And I think from that standpoint, that would be refreshing. By the way, love that Bryce rant there. One bipartisan step coming to you free everywhere you get your podcast, hosted by Bryce Gelman soon, a political podcast. Now, you just hit on the last point I wanted to make before we make our official predictions, which is the ESPN reports that have come out about the Browns and Giants fielding offers. Let me just say this, Bryce. First of all, I believe in the lead up to the draft right now, if you're ESPN or NFL Network, the networks that are hosting the draft, it feels like over the course of the last week, the sexiness and intrigue over the first round of the draft has plummeted. I say that to say, once we found out Hunter to the Browns felt like we started to hear all that Abdul Carter smoke to the Giants, then the quarterbacks themselves aren't necessarily the sexiest, and you throw in the fact that basically from pick 3 on, it's a bunch of non-slam dunk guys, a lot of which will be good, some won't. Hold on.
Bless you. Bless
I
you.
wonder how much of this is just creating chaos. Make sure you turn in early to the draft. There could be anything crazy that happens. So, just from a standpoint. Now, you said the Giants should do their due diligence on everything and anything and leave no stone unturned. I can't fight with that. I can't argue with that. However, where I will push back a little bit, while you do your due diligence, we also must keep in mind everything I just said. If you like the quarterback like Shador Sanders, and you know what, you want to create some assets, and it's a trade with the Patriots, and you're going to sit there at 4 and take Sanders, and in the cusp of it, pick up other picks that are going to be useful. I'm not talking about 5th-round picks, 7th-round picks. I'm talking about 2nd, 3rd, next year's 1st, whatever the hell you may figure out there at the Patriots. Then, to me, if Sanders was your guy, but you felt like you could milk the Patriots for a little more, I live with that trade. What I won't live with is playing the game of let's trade back to 8 with Carolina, give them the first or something like that, like where you're going way back. Because to me, if Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are the only slam dunk guys in the draft, the Giants already did this trade back under Gelman, and we applauded for him at the time when he got leapfrogged for Devontae Smith. He passed on Rashawn Slater of the Chargers, who would be a big-time tackle. He passed on Micah Parsons as a result. How nice would that be to be a New York Giant right now? And the extra one he collected after drafting Kadarius Toney turned into Evan Neal. So don't tell me that trading back and getting these assets means, oh my God, home run. To me, if I think I have a sure thing in Abdul Carter, and I'm weighing that versus getting like 2 extra lotto ticket picks, I'm not interested in making that trade. So if you're doing it because you truly love Shador Sanders, truly love Shador Sanders, and you understand that you could get him and get some value as well, like by moving back 1 spot, then I understand what you're doing. If you're playing the game of we no longer control our own destiny for the quarterback we want, and we're going to lose out on one of the 2 generational quote-unquote talents in the draft, I don't like that at all. That to me, that's just
It's not happening. They're not trading down to 7, 8, 9.
It better not. I'm just saying when you're exploring trades,
then you get Mason Graham. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I
Graham is gone by 6. So
but again, if you're trading back to take a defensive tackle, then just take freaking Abdul Carter at 3. You're only trading back to take the quarterback.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Now, without further ado, Bryce, let's play the what you think the Giants will do and what
they should do.
Well, no, what you think is probably what they should. It's what you think and what they will. Not what they should, because what they should be what you think, right?
Well, no, but what they think, what I think will happen, what will happen is the same thing.
What you think,
what
you want to happen. I'm learning this wrong. What you want to happen and what will happen. Okay, you go first.
What I think will happen. What you think
will happen and what will actually happen. No, what you want? No, I'm
what
still messing this up. This is an outtake for the ages.
what a mess.
What does Bryce Gelman want the Giants to do? What will the Giants actually do?
I want them to stay at 3 and take Abdul Carter. It's so rare that you have the opportunity to add someone you're almost sure is going to be a game breaker and a game wrecker. They have this opportunity after Drew Lock played the best game of his career against the Colts. They won that game. This is where they're at right now. They have to accept their fate, take the best guy on the board, whether it be Hunter or Abdul Carter, and then deal with quarterback later. Figure it out later on in the first round. Figure it out at the top of the second. We had Bobby Skinner on, and he said a multitude of times, with the stats that he has to back this up, after the second round, it's almost impossible to find a quarterback that is going to be a good player in this league. It's almost impossible. In terms of a starter
right.
going forward, it's almost impossible. So taking a quarterback the end of the first round, early second round, gives the Giants the next best chance if they pass on Sanders at 3 to really – I mean, listen, there's no guarantee they find their quarterback in the future, but at least take a shot at someone. Someone's got to start for quarterback next year. Jameis Winston can't be the starter next year. Russell Wilson's only under contract for 1 year. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to draft Abdul Carter. What I want is Carter as well. I just think that's the smartest move to make.
You think what you want is what you're going to get, and do you think that's the only first round pick the Giants make Thursday night?
No, I think they trade back into the first round. They have no choice. I've seen it from a few analysts now that the Giants really need to take a quarterback with one of their first 2 picks. The stats show it. The data shows it.
Yeah.
You are not finding your quarterback in the future after the mid-second round. Almost impossible.
All right. So then I'll go to me. I think what I think and what will happen are both the same thing.
I don't know what you want and what.
What I want and what will happen are both the same thing.
Yes.
I think the Giants are going to stake their claim to identity of pass rush and take Abdul Carter at 3. We're all going to go nuts. We're going to make Lawrence Taylor comparisons. We're going to get way ahead of ourselves, this, that, the other. But we will walk away from pick 3 thinking, man, that Giant pass rush looks pretty on paper. I think the Giants will trade back in, and I think they will take advantage of the fall that happens from Shedeur Sanders. Whether that is at pick 8 with Carolina, which I think is very live, or I think the moment the Saints don't take Shedeur Sanders, whether that's Jackson Dart or something else surprising, I think then the rest of the draft is a complete, oh my God, where does he fall and how far do the Giants climb? I think we are recording a podcast Thursday night where Shedeur Sanders and Abdul Carter are both Giants. And I'm very curious to see the reaction of Giant fans from that point forward. Because this is what's interesting, Bryce, because you're anti-Shedeur and I'm more pro-Shedeur.
It depends where you get Shedeur. I'm
but that's my thing. That's what I'm curious. So all the Giant fans that are anti-Shedeur, if you're anti-Shedeur at pick 3, then to me, that tells me you don't think he'll be a franchise quarterback. Because if you thought he would be, then you would be fine with the Giants taking him at 3. Forget what the Giants are doing for a second. So if they do this, what I'm saying, and trade up for Shedeur, and the fan base that's been anti-Shedeur flips around, I get the sense it would be a little hypocritical. What, now you're going to be excited? Why? Because they got Carter first? But you didn't believe in him as a franchise quarterback, so now you believe because he wasn't pick 3?
It's a fair argument. I just think, playing devil's advocate is the idea that fans want him at a different spot. I don't think that says anything about him being a generational quarterback. I think it's the value that he has. And that people don't have him ranked anywhere near the top 5. Some people do, some people don't. I think the majority of people have him ranked mid-first round, late first round. I don't think fans want to see the Giants do what they did in 2019. Take Daniel Jones, with a top 7 overall pick at number 6.
But had they taken Jones at 17, the end result of Jones would have been the same. And big deal, he would have had Josh Allen, who never turned into Lawrence Taylor either.
You would have felt better about it at the end of the day.
You think for the first time in a long time, you get a unified Giant fan celebration if it's Carter and Sanders, and they walk away with that haul on night 1.
100%. And I also just think that fans don't want to pass up on a generational talent to take an uncertainty with Shedeur Sanders. If you can go back in, not waste that top 3 pick because, to trade back up to get one of those guys, it's almost impossible. The Giants are in an amazing spot right now. Yeah. Other teams are probably.
But if he fails, if Sanders fails, and now you've used 2 picks to get up and get him, I mean that's still a fail and a bust.
It's a lot better of a situation than passing up Abdul Carter, because if this doesn't pan out, Shedeur Sanders doesn't end up being a great player, Shane and Dable get fired. Guess what? At the end of the day, you're still going to have Abdul Carter. You're still going to have him. You know what I mean? So if they take a quarterback because there's pressure, it's going to be a mess. I don't think that's going to be the case. That's why I think that Carter's going to be the pick at 3.
All right, this is where I kind of toot my own horn a little bit on one giant step in the history of this podcast, which goes back to that last Gelman draft. I was the only Giants podcast at the time, before Bryce was even born, that had the Giants' first round selection as Kadarius Toney. I had Art Stapleton on with me on the draft preview pod. He was still backing up. I was the only one that said it, and they did it. They ended up with Kadarius Toney. I, like many others, because I felt like they were targeting, had Deontay Banks as the first round pick for the New York Giants. And last year,
Profit.
what?
Your profit. Draft profit.
I was a draft profit. And I got to be honest with you. I didn't do the research. I think last year we both thought Neighbors was going to be the pick. I think we did.
Both of us did.
But also a lot of the world did. So again, I'm not patting myself on the back too much. But we could make it 4 straight years here for the New York Giants. Or I guess it wouldn't be 4 straight years because you had the Kayvon draft, which I didn't think Kayvon would be the pick. So 4 or 5 years, we could be right if Abdul Carter is the pick here on one Giants step. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right, we'll be back with you.
Wait,
If you're
Shaun,
listening.
let me ask you this, and we've discussed making a whole podcast out of this, but if they take Carter, does that signal the end of Kayvon Thibodeau? I think the right move is to trade him away.
It's not the right move. And again, we're going to put a pin in that. If they don't trade him on draft weekend, we're going to discuss that further on a whole pod because, Bryce, what you don't remember is that after that schedule comes out mid-May, there's a lot of empty weeks before training camp opens, my friend. And that's a lot of empty podcast content.
That's a good point.
Don't waste your bullets on draft week. I'm Shaun Morash. He's Bryce Gelman. We'll be back with you Thursday night, Friday morning, whenever your listening habits indulge, to kind of give you our reaction to what the Giants did in round 1. In the meantime, if you want to interact with us, Twitter, X, at Bryce Gelman, at Shaun Morash. And for anybody out there, maybe you're heading over to the Giants watch party at MetLife Stadium on Thursday night. Come by to the Dream Bar, an American Dream, beforehand from 2 to 6:30, a live broadcast where I will be there with the rest of my Evan and Tiki Show teammates, taking pictures, talking draft, having a good time. Dream Bar, American Dream, 2 to 6:30 Thursday, leading up to the draft, directly across from MetLife Stadium. All right, he's Bryce Gelman. I'm Shaun Morash. Thanks for taking one giant step with us.